Welcome to Between Two Chairs, Demystifying Commercial Real Estate, the podcast that brings you the latest insights and trends on the South Florida commercial real estate market, with your hosts, Fernando Arencibia Jr. and Jennifer Woolman. In each episode, we dive into the world of commercial real estate and break down complex concepts to make them accessible for everyone. Whether you're a real estate professional, a curious investor, or just interested in the South Florida market in general, Between Two Chairs is the podcast for you. So pull up a chair and join us.
All right, well, we'll get started for sure. Well, welcome everybody to another episode of Between Two Chairs. My name is Fernando Arencibia, and with me, as always, is the globe-trotting traveler that is Jennifer Woolman. Hi, Jennifer.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Doing great.
Awesome. So today we have a very special episode to discuss something that we've been discussing. It's been a theme over the last 3 episodes, which really has been retail. And what better time to discuss the retail than in December?
Right. Holiday season, shopping galore, small business Saturdays, you name it.
Yeah, absolutely. So today we thought that we would do a breakdown of retail as an asset class. We've done this before, discussing industrial and discussing office. And, we thought it would be a good time to kind of break down retail as an asset class from the point of view of the investor, those that transact in it, but also the retailers themselves, the independent small businesses that occupy all these retail spaces throughout South Florida.
Right. And so we started with the South Florida Independent Retailer Awards, which was a couple of episodes again, followed by the Queen, the Canvassing Queen of Retail, whatever anybody in retail knows her, our interview with Beth Azor. So if you're listening to this and you haven't listened to that episode, I would highly recommend that you go back, listen to the Beth Azor interview, and then come back and get an overview of the retail as an asset class, whether you're an investor or a broker. What we're going to go over today is general, but it's my favorite asset class. It's the fun asset class, right?
Let's talk about that. As many of you know, Florida International University has a real estate program. They have the Hollow School of Real Estate, and I remember one time they were doing an event for RESA, which is sort of like a council, like a student council for real estate, and those that are pursuing a career in real estate. Someone came in to do a presentation, and they were from ICSC, the International Conference of Shopping Centers?
The International Council of Shopping Centers, yes.
That's how he started the presentation, is that, I transact in fun. So tell me about, I know that you get very excited about retail, so why is it the fun class?
And it's funny because I'm not a shopper, right? Like I don't physically enjoy shopping, but I love retail. I love going to stores. I love looking at the architecture. I love looking at the layout of retail space. And to me, it's fun because I do like to shop in very small individual stores. I get overwhelmed in the big shopping centers, but I don't know. I just love it. I love the energy. I love the fact that a lot of people consider retail and shopping like therapy. For me, it stresses me out, but a lot of people consider it therapy. But I don't know. I just love the individuality of each of the spaces, whether you're a huge store like a Macy's or what used to be Bloomies, or I don't even know the inline ones anymore, or you're a small independent business. Being in the retail space really allows you to engage one-on-one with the consumer. And I love that. I love seeing that interaction. Plus, in retail, you have food and beverage, you have, movie theaters, you have all sorts of stuff. So it's where entertainment happens. People go and hang out in cold places. They use it as an exercise loop. And in hot places like Florida, they use it for the AC, also for an exercise loop in the middle of summer. So
if you ever get stuck trying to name a store, we have our trusty sidekick Jessica. She likes to shop. She's seen a great shopping mall here or there, so she could always chime in. But certainly for me, it feels very much like it is the epicenter of creativity when it comes to commercial real estate.
Correct.
Is in retail. And what I mean by that is if you are a brick and mortar store and you have a product to sell, you have worked very hard on designing that product. But then now when you are actually installing or showing or showcasing that product to the public, now you have to actually build not only the infrastructure, but more importantly, the ambiance that you want to create within, four walls, most of the time, to be able to showcase that product. So I think that there's a layer of creativity that is there, that is very evident and is very clear to me, that doesn't show up necessarily in the office sector. It doesn't show up in industrial. It doesn't show up in multifamily to a degree. And the other part of the creativity is, if you have a shopping center and you have X number of stores, is the curating aspect of it. I always see it almost like a gallery would curate an art installation, and it's the curation of, putting all the right pieces together and the right businesses that are going to complement each other and that are going to enhance the shopping center. That also requires a certain level of creativity. Lastly, the other thing that always catches my attention about it is how plugged into the economy are all of the those that run, manage, own shopping centers. That right. How much they have to be connected to what is happening, what are the trends. So it's not just I'm an owner of a shopping center and I'm just going to list it and it's going to be X price. But now not only do I have to curate it, but I have to be aware. If I want to be very successful and I want to have a great center, I have to be very aware of what are the trends, what is happening. So I think that the reason why it's fun is because it keeps you hip. It keeps you, right. It keeps you plugged into what's happening
to the current culture.
To the current
right,
culture.
And that's why I laugh, because the reason I can't think of some of the big names is because they've closed. Right, Bloomingdale's no longer here, Burdine's no longer here. Right, so that's why in those big spaces are being subdivided. But let's take a little step back, because we said we were going to do an overview of it as an asset class. According to ICSC, they break down shopping centers into general purpose centers, specialized purpose centers, and then limited purpose property. Limited purpose property is considered airport retail, now probably Brightline retail, very hyper specialized. We're not going to discuss that. And then the specialized purpose centers include power centers, lifestyle centers, factory outlets, of which we have a ton in Southeast Florida, and then theme or festival shopping centers that are, very leisure, tourist related, and might have some kind of entertainment as a unifying theme.
You know more about this asset class than I do. So what do they consider a power center?
So a power center, and I'm going to read directly from their site, is category dominant anchors, including discount department stores, off-price stores, wholesale clubs with only a few small tenants. And then lifestyle is upscale national chain specialty stores with dining, etc. For our purpose, just because I think it's mostly what we have and what most of us are familiar with, we're going to be focusing on the general purpose centers, which include super regional malls. A super regional mall is typically 800,000 or more square feet and covers 60 to 120 acres. So these are big. Big. They have 3 or more anchors and then a ton of smaller boutique-y type independent shops to fill in the middles. The regional mall is general merchandise or fashion-oriented offerings. It typically has inward-facing stores connected by a common walkway. So here I would consider a super regional mall Aventura. Dadeland falls in between super regional and regional because it's right under, I think, 600,000 square feet. Aventura is much bigger. Aventura is over, how many square feet is Aventura?
It's significant.
Yeah, it's big. I'll get that number in a minute,
Yeah,
but
it's a small little city.
Yeah, no, it's 2.8. It's right under 3 million, I think, with the expansion that they recently did. I think it's like 2.7 million. Thank you, Jessica.
Jessica has walked every single one of those. Nah, I'm just messing with you.
And then the community center is like a large neighborhood center. It's general merchandise with a bunch of stuff that you would typically need in a neighborhood. So it's where you go and get your books, your electronics. It's usually the supermarket anchored, supermarket anchored. And then they normally have a drugstore in line as well, even though recently we've been moving drugstores seem to be going to out parcels on those properties. And then there's the strip center convenience, which is, if you're from Miami-Dade County, it's pretty much everything that lines US 1, right? Yeah. Which is much smaller. It's a small row of stores, usually under 30,000 square feet. They don't have an anchor, and this is mostly what the small investor invests in. Right. That invests in retail. They usually invest in the strip convenience size, just because most of the bays are extremely standard. Yeah. And they're shells, and it's pretty easy to go in and put in lighting, a counter, etc., and make it retail. Right. For shopping, or you can take out the counter and put in a little welcoming area, and that's a medical center, right? So that's happened a lot in the strip convenience centers recently.
What, in your experience, do investors like about this asset class?
So most of the small investors like the strip because it's need-based, right? So it's where anybody in a neighborhood goes to get their hair done, their nails done. They go out for, I'm thinking of Sunnyland, right? I'm thinking of the Sunnyland shopping plaza. It has a little bit of everything. It has a small clothing store. It has some small, very quick fast food, fast casual restaurants. It has a barber shop. It has a lab testing area. So things that are pretty easy to rent out again, because it's needs-based for the community. Also, the mortgage loans on that size investment are pretty easy to secure. Harder now, just given the climate, cap rate versus interest rate. But overall, they're small buildings. They're 5,000 to 30,000 square feet, so fairly manageable. Yeah. And usually you get tenants in there, and the leases are a lot longer than investing in a small multifamily, like, 5-plex and under. You're going to have a lot less headaches. It's probably more or less in the same price range for the lower density, lower number of units multifamily with a lot less of the headache. And then again, the tenants stay a lot longer. Usually they'll do some capital improvements on the place, and the leases are for a lot longer. Recently, we've seen a change from 2 triple net leases. Right. So all of their expenses are also covered. So it's a lot easier to manage. Not as easy as industrial, but still right along those lines. Correct. And then again, it's fun. It's where people go for entertainment. And the malls and retail have been getting a bad rap over the last 5 years. People saying, oh, retail's dead, because e-commerce is taking over. And in reality, that's not true. In reality, a lot of stores have gone from starting off as either a food truck, and then they transition to bricks and mortar retail with a bricks and mortar restaurant. Or they've started off, like a client of mine, Aria Rose, is a clothing and accessory store for women, and she started online. And then she created this adorable space in Coral Gables just to engage even further with her community. She's now going back just to e-commerce only because she's getting ready to have her first baby. And for her as an individual business owner, it took a lot of effort to create all of the events and everything within the retail. But she was super, super successful with it and loved it because she got to engage page with her customers. She had an incredible Instagram wall. Her clients would come in and model. I mean, she's amazing on Instagram as well. But
well, the other side of that is that, we've always heard people say that that's where the profitability lies. They're profitable centers because, in e-commerce, you have to deal with the overwhelming cost of shipping everything, sending everything out. But the brick and mortar stores are actually making money. They're actually profiting. I heard an investor who owns this kind of products who told me one time, what I love about it is if you treat people well, if you take care of your shopping center, tenants, far exceed the timeline of their initial lease. You usually get them to renew once or twice, and they're happy there. And if for whatever reason they're outgrowing, you don't have any more space for them to grow, they have to go somewhere else, you have a proof of concept. Right. Exactly that product is going to do very well. So when you go back into the market, you know exactly what to look for because you know how successful they're going to be there. And in a lot of ways, very smart owners of this product, they are always looking at tying their success to the success of the stores. So they're looking at how are the stores going to not only survive and do well, but more importantly, thrive under this environment. And that's why they're so conscientious as to where everything is going to go. And curating, again, I know that I've overused that word. It seems to be the word of the day, but I do think that there is an intentionality in which you structure the tenancies that is very important, and it's a very important component of a successful retail center.
Correct. And, just to go to your word, curate, I think that word is especially important. I mean, it's important in just about any type of commercial real estate, but none more than in retail, because you get certain businesses that feed off of each other and create foot traffic. That's why some of the bigger investors like the grocery anchored, right? Because that's a destination. You have to go get groceries. What else can I put in that space that's going to get you to shop there while you go get your groceries? If you go get your groceries, you might have to run to the post office if people still use mail letters anymore, but it's the holiday season, so I know they're mailing packages. So you have a post office, you might have some after school activity for kids, you might have an exercise facility so that the people can either go, can go grocery shopping after they exercise. So it's kind of the curation allows for multitasking when they go into a center. And a lot of the individual businesses look for specific type centers, like food and beverage loves being with other food and beverage. And you might think that that's counterintuitive because, well, why would you come to my, let's say, fast casual Subway shop when if you could be going for a quick sushi? Well, they're different. And if one's full and the other one's not, or if one day I feel like a sandwich and the other day I feel like sushi, it's the same demographic more or less. So that's why, as a business owners look for that.
Enough, you see this across, it's easy to see it for food and beverage, but you see this across industries. I had a client who was looking for space for his bank. I had a conversation with the CEO. His explanation to me was that part of the consideration is that I want to be where I am in close proximity to two other banks. They figured that there was some value, right, and they've seen it throughout the years, in being in a location where there are other banking institutions that are surrounding the area, and then they're just competing for what this bank is providing versus the other. But at the end of that, it kind of becomes an area where everybody knows there's a bank there. So they want to compete for those eyeballs. I've seen people do this. There's a reason why you see, when was the last time you drove anywhere and you saw one mattress store? You didn't, liar. You saw 4 or 5. They're always all around. And I think that there is a sense of, hey, if they go to that store and they don't find what they like, they could just cross the street and go to mine. There's a sense, and you see that throughout. We've spoken a little bit about the positives of owning the asset class, but what are the things to look out for? What are the issues to watch out for when you own this asset class?
So I think one of the things is parking. Always parking. Parking is always an issue. You and I have harped on it in every asset class. So that's one. if you're buying an existing retail space and you, as an investor, you're buying it based on the income that's being generated by that center. So you really have to look at the leases and the expenses and everything else that's related there and the makeup. Because if you have a store that's only been open for, 6 months or a year, and they have a 5 to 7 year lease with options, and they're already rocky, that's an issue. If you, so read every single lease, top to bottom, have somebody else read the leases to make sure you didn't miss anything. Because the other thing that's in there is in a lot of these leases, especially in grocery anchored, they're exclusivities. So if you have a grocery anchored store, you probably can't put in another bakery or a cookie shop, or so you're limited in terms of what you can put in, depending on the exclusivity that you have in each lease. If you have several of those, you might be extremely limited. So definitely read every single lease.
I think you're absolutely right. There's a lot of exclusions there, and this leads to another conversation. But sometimes something looks like what is supposed to be, but it isn't. And it's when there's been, for example, a zoning change. So you might buy the shopping center, and you might think, well, it's obvious. There are stores here, there are offices here. I can do anything that is related to both of those sectors. But if you don't dig deep into what the zoning code is actually allowing for, and making sure that you have certificate of uses for everybody, that everybody's above board, and that everybody is approved to be there, those things tend to backfire later on when you're trying to make improvements to the shopping center and you're trying to fill the shopping center. I will also say that for the future, you also want to know, well, how much control did the owner provide to the tenants that are occupying a large percentage of the shopping center. So I'll give you an example. I was involved in a transaction in which one tenant that occupied a very small percentage of the space had a first right of refusal for the sale of the property. And it became a very difficult scenario that really was totally unnecessary. The owner had no need really to ever give that person so much power over their procedures, and it became complicated totally unnecessarily. So there are little things that you find, and you have to mark those, and you have to see, well, what is the risk that I'm taking, so that when you go back to the seller, you can have those conversations about, what is the value commensurate with the risk of me buying at X price. Right. So those things, become important. But I think definitely the leasing, reading all the leases is important, the zoning. I think let's talk a little bit about cost as well, because...
Well, before we go there, one other thing that I thought of also based on a retail space that you're selling that you have listed is that, so according to Crexi, the median year built of the retail sales that took place between December 1st of 2022 and December 1st of 2023 was 1972, right? Mm-hmm. So that was the median year. So, and the lowest year was a 1920s building, right? All the way up to 2021. So if you're buying an older center and you do have food and beverage, which a lot of our all of our centers have food and beverage lately, it seems like, and you have a grease trap, you have to make sure, going back to your zoning and your certificate of use, that those grease traps are still okay and valid, because putting in a new grease trap is extremely expensive. And again, going back to reading the leases and seeing who's responsible for what when an option to renew comes into place, I would also be looking at that. So during my due diligence, I would make sure to have a very extensive review of the physical aspects of the property, including within the spaces that are being leased out.
Well, let's throw out one more tip since we're in the middle of this, because it's an important component. When you have a retailer go into a space, they go to their municipality and they get a certificate of use, which basically allows them to use the property for its intended purposes. sometimes in the middle of that year in which they are approved to utilize a space for, let's say in this case, a restaurant, there might be a change in the zoning code. There might be a change by DERM or their local, environmental protection agency that has to do with the grease trap. Now, what normally a municipality would do is that they would say, as long as the certificate of use is updated, right, the certificate of use is renewed, it never lapses, then you can basically grandfather in the current use that you have, even though moving forward, new rules will require you to build or modify your grease trap. Once that certificate of use lapses, and it lapses for more than a year, then you lose that right, and the cost of a certificate of use is a few $100. And so it can be extremely costly to not maintain that certificate of use. So it's important when you have, when you own this and all of a sudden the tenant leaves, for you to work to keep the certificate of use active throughout. So, just a little tip there of little things that you learn along the way. Let's talk about the cost of when you are talking to a tenant, especially they're taking a significant space, they're always going to want to get a credit for the build out that they're going to do to the space. And of course, anything that they have fixed to the property is going to be owned by the owner of the center. Explain to people about what is TI and how usually landlords break down that initial investment.
So TI is tenant improvements, and as Fernando just described, is kind of how you build out the space to suit your own needs. And usually the landlord will give a certain dollar per square foot amount for tenant improvements, depending on the length of the lease. Obviously, the longer the lease, the more they'd give out. We were just at the South Florida Independent Retailers Awards, and very few of the landlords there were willing to do TIs just because retail is in such demand right now. So it really does depend on the market. The slower or weaker the market is for a landlord, obviously, the stronger it is and more negotiating power the tenant has to get that. Also, I think the quality of the tenant has a little bit more negotiating power.
True.
Depending on how badly a landlord wants your specific use or your specific company in their space, they'd be more willing to give on that for a longer term lease.
I think they also look at the investment of doing the investment now, but knowing that will remain that use for many, many years, and how they amortize that cost.
Correct.
So if it's a 5-year lease, then they'll know, well, there's a certain amount that I'm willing to give that takes up a certain number of months of the lease, so that there's a break-even month,
Correct.
Which, in some cases might be the 13th month, it might be the 8th month. And then after that, then, everything that's coming in is incredible, profits to the center.
Correct. And I just wanted to put it in perspective. The reason so many landlords, even though they can amortize, so many retail landlords are not giving TI is because the current vacancy rate is and has been since 2022, according to NAR's commercial third quarter for 2023 report. The vacancy rate is at 3% for Miami-Dade, Fort Lauderdale, and Palm Beach. That is extremely low. The market rents are $44 a square foot, and in a lot of places like the Design District, Wynwood, Coral Gables, downtown, significantly higher than that. And the market rent is continuing to grow, and a lot of that has to do just that. A lot of older retail has been torn down for mixed-use development, and we're not building a lot of new retail.
I want to also say something that I find really interesting about this asset class, especially when we're talking with young commercial practitioners, that are entering into the industry. Would you say that retail is one of those asset classes that is, in a way, the easiest to learn or to immerse yourself with, or do you think that is an exaggeration?
I wouldn't say it's the easiest, because every single use requires something different. right? So if you put medical in retail space, your requirements are totally different than if it's just a dry goods clothing store, which is totally different than if you put in food and beverage. So even within one strip mall, you can have totally different requirements for each individual space. So I don't think it's the easiest. It's definitely the most fun because every use is, again, completely different.
The reason why I was asking this question is I once was a part of a conversation where this was debated, and this was the point that was made, which is that we've all gone to offices, mostly medical offices, right? Unless you're in the industry, very difficult for you to say, I visited a lot of industrial warehouse space, right? Unless you're working on industrial, something like that. Multifamily is one of those things. You're not just going to walk into a 100-unit multifamily and start walking into the, units and checking them out and all that stuff. You're not going to walk into a 100,000 square foot, industrial distribution center and be able to just walk around and check it out.
Right.
But you could walk to any retail and you can learn about what is trending and what is the changing dynamics of retail anytime that you want to.
I guess in terms of use, you would be right? Because you can literally sit down at a strip mall and people watch and see who's coming. You can see traffic and everything else. But in terms of transacting in it, I would say multifamily or office are much easier because it's a single use, right? Multifamily, you're only going to be renting to people who are renters. And if you're an office building, not medical, but just an office building, it's kind of cookie cutter. Some is going to be bigger square footage, some is going to be smaller square footage. But if the zoning allows office, any office can go in there, right? Maybe not medical, but that's why I'm saying excluding medical. And in residential, any tenant can go into that building. Whereas in the shopping center, depending on the use, not so much. So I guess it's a twofold answer, right?
So let me ask you this as we're getting to the end of the episode, but let's talk a little bit about what trends are you seeing in retail. One of the things that I find really interesting as, we're very close to Dayland Mall today when we're recording this. And to me, there is a very interesting dynamic that has been happening all around in shopping malls and shopping centers, which is bringing the inside to the outside, right? It seemed to be that a lot of the malls had a very Las Vegas casino mentality. We want them in there and we want them stuck inside. We just want them walking inside. But now with the advent of moving into a more of an entertainment, food and beverage approach, more experiential, retail, there seems to be this move where all of a sudden you have these areas that are very accessible from the exterior instead of having to go inside the mall and walk around long places to actually get to a place, especially if you're driving by, not very long ago, you would not be able to see the front of a restaurant outside of Dayland Mall.
Right. Everything was inside.
Everything was inside. And now you have a rooftop and you have, that experience has really, really shifted and is very evident as you're going by.
That's a really interesting point. So I think what's happening is as the dynamics of retail changes, and what we're especially seeing in South Florida is most of the regional and super regional malls are becoming more lifestyle centers. And a lot of them are being converted. So to your point, Dadeland Mall used to be a huge square box, right? And you would only be able to see what was in it by walking, parking and going inside the mall. Now they've added a whole restaurant section, and they were brilliant in doing this because what they did is get people like me who wouldn't normally go to the mall to be able to go just for eating. So they have a whole separate level. You park, you never go into the mall, and you can hit all of their restaurants without ever stepping foot in the mall. And they have outdoor terraced seating. They have and that also allowed them to draw more upscale, bigger chains and stuff. They also added a hotel. So they used to have, I think they still do, a lot of South American travel agents put together packages where they put together flights, hotel, and shopping excursions. And the shopping excursions usually include Dadeland, Aventura, and Sawgrass Mills. And then, so having a hotel there is perfect. Now just think of, I would be advertising if I were them, which I'm sure they do, to all of the people, the travel agents in South America, because now they have this brand new hotel there. Another one that's starting to change and becoming more of a lifestyle center is the Falls, right? So the Falls is this great concept. It's a total open area mall. They were never one of those that just closed in. The middle of the mall is open air, and it's all waterfalls, and it's relaxing. It's a place I love to go, whether I shop or not, just to stroll around because it's relaxing. And they put in the Lifetime Center, a big gym. It's 40,000 square feet. They're going to have an outdoor beach and pool, which they're still developing. So they're doing that. Southland Mall got sold and is being redeveloped into a mixed-use lifestyle center. And that's brilliant because now you're creating your own micro community within the community. So yes, you're still going to be drawing from the external suburban neighborhoods into these lifestyle centers for the dining and the movies and shopping and everything else. But if you add residential to it, you're now creating a space where somebody can literally live, work, and play and not leave that micro community, right? So we're seeing more of that. The Southland Mall is $1 billion redevelopment of 80 acres. I'm super excited to see what that looks like. And then
there's a multifamily component to it. I mean, it's quite the mixed-use project that we're going to see develop there, and in an area that can really benefit from it.
Yeah, it's awesome for residential too because it's South Dade, which is expanding rapidly, and that mall was dead because it didn't have, for as big as it didn't have the demographic and the density to make it viable because it's such a huge, it's 80 acres and it was really spread out kind of with the parking. It was a little bit weird. The parking was more like in the middle. There was a little bit of parking on the outside and then the shops were kind of this block square. So it didn't work very well, but I know it's going to be super successful. And then Aventura Mall, which is the third largest mall in the United States, when they redid it, when did they redo it? I wanted to say that they kind of wrapped it up around 2017, 2016. But wow, talk about how they redid it. I mean, huge entertainment value, tons of top-notch restaurants, a lot of very high-end boutiques and shops, but a lot of fun shops, a lot of public art in the spaces. So again, the stereotypical is the woman likes to shop and the husband just gets dragged along and is bored stiff. But in this case, everybody can go there and have a great time. There's so much going on in that mall.
They have a great movie theater as well, and there seems to be very intentional in the way that they created almost quadrants. So there's a way for you to go to one quadrant and have dinner or go to the movie theater, do a little bit of shopping, but you don't have to actually walk the entire mall to just experience that quadrant of the mall. Because you're going there for that purpose. Very, very well done.
And the other thing I just want to talk about really briefly, because I know we're running out of time and I feel like we totally neglected it, but it's the freestanding retail. And, Barry Wolf is the king of triple net lease sales and everything else, and fast casual dining. All of these single independent stores also help create the fabrics of the neighborhood. And I'm thinking specifically of the design district in Wynwood, right? They don't have strip centers. They don't have regional malls. Every single building is its own space or it's part of a mixed use project. But in the design district, every single building is a retail building. And I love that. To me, that creates a much more sense of a neighborhood. It's much more intentional, and their curating is extremely important. And I think the design district, they did an amazing job developing that as now an area that people never used to go to. It used to be like literally the design district, right? It's if you needed plumbing or you needed furniture furniture or you needed tiles, you would go to the design district. And now it is literally a destination to go and enjoy with tons of amazing restaurants. And
of course, we're entering the Art Basel phase of Miami, which it's its own season. Probably the design district gets a big chunk of that attention, and Wynwood. And I remember when they were adapting the small bay warehouses that were on what we call hard corners, major thoroughfares in Wynwood into retail, and they were opening it up, and all of a sudden you have the Ducati store there, and you have all these other great funky stores that are popping up, and that was an area that not too long ago was a lot of people would not visit it for entertainment or for shopping or for anything like that, and now it has totally shifted. So a big shout out to the Goldman family for starting that rehabilitation and the growth of Wynwood.
And I want to do one shout out to a store called Reformation, and thank you, Corinna. My daughter introduced me to this store. It's a clothing store for women, and it's in the design district. And it's so cool because it's not my typical shopping experience. You go in there, you look, everything, you can pull down this computer screen that's touch friendly. Yeah. You walk into these beautifully lit changing rooms. You can change the lighting in the changing room, and they don't put your clothing on a hanger. You put it inside a closet. And then miraculously, somebody comes in and puts either the smaller size, the larger size, whatever piece that's similar into the closet and removes it. So you never have anybody knocking on the door going, hello, can I help you? Can I help you? But it's a super cool concept. So it was just an interesting experience for shopping there. So do you have your fun fact?
We're always monitoring this because I think it's infinitely interesting to people, and also because it's that time of year. So we have seen holiday sales to increase between 7 and 9% over 2022. So just to give you an idea that we are at 900. So the increase that is expected is from $957.3 billion to $966.6 billion. And that is an increase from the sales in 2022 were at $929.5 billion in sales. So, wow, numbers. Yeah, absolutely. There's an average of $875 that is spent on gifts, food, decorations, and other seasonal items. The one thing that I found really interesting as I was looking at the stats is that Generation Zers are the top Black Friday shoppers. Wow. So I don't even know what a Generation Zer is. So, that's something to learn every day. How about you, my friend?
So for me, my stat is, going back to the Aventura Mall, is their slide. So going into entertainment, they built a 93-foot tall slide. It was built by Karsten Haller, a German architect, and it's 93 feet tall, made out of steel and glass, and you can jump in there and slide down.
I love it. Talk about experiential, right?
Exactly. I'd go to Aventura for the slide, probably.
Yeah, exactly. I love Aventura as well. We love it. We love it. All right, everybody. Well, thank you again for joining us on another episode of Between Two Chairs. We're getting close to the end of the year. I just want to say that we have a little special raffle coming up in our last episode of the year. So, listen for that. We have a little nice giveaway for you all. We appreciate everyone who listens to the episodes and who sends us little comments. It's always a little surprising to us when somebody tells us that they listen to an episode or a few episodes. So, we feel great about it, and we really are very appreciative. So thank you guys. Until next time. All right.
Bye.
Jinx, you owe me a Coke.